Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football. The fellas heading out to the Pac-12 in what is a very intriguing game as USC UCLA showdown. It was a great game last year. It's going to be a good one this year. UCLA obviously coming off I was asleep. East Coast time. It was a long day for me. I was out, had to rewatch it this morning. A little bit of a head scratcher, losing to Arizona. But this UCLA team, I think, matches up really well against what USC wants to do. And I think it's going to be a really good game. The spread, I believe, sitting at 2.5-point favorites for USC. It's going to be a good one. Before we get into it, though, as usual, just want to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown the channel. We really do love making these videos. We love talking ball with you guys in the comments. So if you guys do like the channel, you like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. That helps us out a lot. We really do appreciate the support. Dill, I'm going to kick this one off to you. What are your early takes here on this game?
Yeah, and I know you look at UCLA, they've had some clunkers of games, a couple of them, frankly, this year. But when they play the big dogs, they typically play pretty well. I know Oregon, I thought they played okay against Oregon. Oregon's better than USC, though, in my opinion. So I think, yes, they had a bad showing last game. They had a bad showing earlier. But when they go on the likes of a Utah, they look really good. And if that's how they can play against USC, they're going to be a real problem.
And when you go back to look at that game, they had trouble stopping Arizona, which is concerning because they kind of run what USC is going to want to try to do. But 2 of 5 on fourth down, a couple stops in the red zone. That's kind of what led to the loss. They actually outgained Arizona. They didn't look as bad as what the scoreboard might show. When you look at this game, USC, UCLA, the matchup within the game, I think the story is getting the ground attack going with Zach Charbonnet. And you look at what he did yesterday against Arizona, 24 carries for 181 yards. USC all season has struggled to stop the run. Their defense hasn't been great. The secondary hasn't been great. The front seven hasn't been good. Kind of how they've been making their money is off turnovers, averaging over 2 turnovers per game. If UCLA wants to beat USC, they're going to need to run the ball consistently and then keep Caleb Williams in that explosive offense under Lincoln Riley off the field.
And that's the thing. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't run the ball really well because you're right. USC hasn't stopped anyone from running it. Even Colorado in the early portion of that game was running the ball pretty well. Their quarterback couldn't do anything. But at the end of the day, everyone's running on USC. I don't see how that'd be different because this is probably the best rushing attack in the conference, if I had to say.
Yeah, and you look at the depth concern, and depth was already a problem for USC. And so we're talking about, they have a decent first stringers on defense, but they're dealing with a lot of injuries. Obviously, Jordan Addison has not been healthy. Mario Williams hasn't been healthy. Travis Dye goes out with injury. Eric Gentry on the other side of the ball, he's also been banged up. I'm a little bit concerned just of attrition. USC had a lot of turnover within their roster. They have a lot of guys who haven't been with the program or maybe aren't ready for Pac-12 high-level FBS college football, and having some of those guys not be healthy, kind of be banged up. That's another story to monitor. So Saturday, you're checking that injury report because some of these guys, key contributors, are kind of questionable for this game.
Yeah, and you just can't be thin, especially at the linebacker spot. Eric Gentry's a guy who, to attack this UCLA running attack, which is very West Coast and go sideline to sideline, you want an athletic, rangier linebacker, and that's what Gentry's been. And the one issue with that, the other side of that, is they're not a very physical inside, and tackling Charbonnet is a problem. So I think they need to be full strength for this game if they want to slow him down. I mean, you look at the other side, we'll see what they can do, but I don't know. This defense is going to score a lot of points, I think, for UCLA.
Yeah, and in UCLA, that's kind of the key. You look at it, there's 2 key factors for me. UCLA needs to take care of the football, and DTR, in his credit, has struggled with it in the past. He's been very good. I believe only 4 interceptions on the year. The offense as a whole is only turning it over 1 time per game. If USC can force maybe a couple turnovers, that's a big storyline on defense, and then just stopping the run. Zach Charbonnet is a big dude. We know him from his Michigan days. He's a very strong kid. You do not want to tackle him 30 times a game. I'm guessing UCLA's, if there is a game to ride a back like Zach Charbonnet, it's going to be Saturday against USC. I think you're going to have a lot of Zach Charbonnet. If USC cannot stop him and get that offense on the field, you got to like UCLA.
In USC at least needs to try to do a better job not letting guys get going downhill very quick, because that seems to be the crux of the issue. And like their defensive line just doesn't make a ton of plays in the run game, and they don't clog holes. So there's creases, and that's where you don't want Charbonnet. You're right, too big, too physical. Once you can get him rolling, he's a problem. So I'm kind of with you. I hate this matchup for USC on the defensive side of the ball. No, you flip over to the offense. This is another side of it where I think USC's got their issues with it. Is you look at Caleb Williams' numbers, they're really good. He's having too many spells of really bad play, like parts of a game where they're just doing nothing, and too much hero ball, which is something he did a lot at Oklahoma. He's doing a lot this year, and he's good at it. But UCLA is a more athletic defensive line than he's used to playing, and I don't think your hero ball system is as effective with that athleticism on the field for UCLA.
Yeah, and Caleb Williams has been phenomenal this year. I mean, you look at the stats, over 3,000 yards, 31 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. He's limiting those turnovers. The team as a whole has been very, very good. They're only averaging 0.3 turnovers per game, and then they're forcing 2 turnovers. The turnover margin has been very good for USC, and that's a reason why they're 9-1. I'm kind of with you, though. Caleb Williams in his numbers are much more reliant on those big splash plays to guys like Mario Williams, to guys like Jordan Addison or Travis Dye running the football. In terms of consistency, they haven't been the most consistent team driving the football. And that's one of the stories for UCLA. And when you look at USC and when they've had trouble back to Oregon State, like that's a team that if you keep everything in front of you, force Caleb Williams to make accurate throws down the field, make those touchdown drives instead of 4 plays, 75 yards, make him go 10, 12, 15 plays down the field, pick up a holding penalty, pick up an incompletion, get some pressure on Caleb Williams. That's kind of, in my opinion, how UCLA is going to try to slow down Caleb Williams. Keep everything in front of you.
Yeah, and that's the recipe. And if they can do that, the added wrinkle is Travis Dye injury, which is brutal for USC, I think, because he was putting together a great year. And I don't think they got a guy to replace what he's been doing, because he's added an element of physicality that I don't think USC had last year, and in a guy who can pick up hard yards. So I think that injury is going to mean a lot more. I know a lot of people think like that USC team's doing it all through the air. And
no,
yes, that's true to an extent. But I do think what Dye is able to do it and give them a running game threat has definitely helped Caleb Williams.
Travis Dye he's been one of the least talked about players, and deservingly, like he should be talked about more. You look at his numbers, he's having 6.1 yards per carry. He's also caught 21 catches for over 200 yards out of the backfield. He's an integral part of this USC defense. And if UCLA doesn't need to load the box to stop a guy like Travis Dye, it's going to fall on Austin Jones or Raleek Brown, who are 2 talented backs, but not as trustworthy. You haven't seen as much of them. Austin Jones only 52 carries on the year. Raleek Brown only 31 carries. If USC can't run the football, they've relied on running the football a decent amount to kind of loosen up defenses, get some loaded boxes, and then you hit the big plays down the field. If they can't run the football as effectively against UCLA as they're used to doing, I think UCLA could have some success. And you mentioned it. UCLA has some guys, the Murphy brothers. You look at guys like Latu. They got some guys that can get Caleb Williams off his spot. And when he's struggled, that's what it looks like. Getting him off his spot, kind of scrambling around the pocket. They can keep him inside the pocket, get him off his spot a little bit. The matchup does seem to kind of point towards UCLA when you – a little bit like Washington and Oregon. We were looking at that game last week. Washington's strengths, throwing the ball. What are the weaknesses of Oregon? The pass rush in the secondary. And Washington was able to expose that. This game, it kind of looks to be a very similar game. UCLA likes to run the football. USC struggles to stop the run. Still, the line, USC 2.5-point favorites against UCLA. What is your lean here?
Yeah, and you just look at this and you look at the records and everything else. I think a lot of people would be surprised to see UCLA this tight. And I think what did it start at, like -1? So
it opened up as a pick 'em. It's already up to 2.5.
So I mean, people are already like hopping on the USC bandwagon, and USC has been good. I know like part of this video probably seemed like I think USC's trash, but I mean Caleb Williams is playing excellent. The wide receivers have played really well, so the offense in general is very good, but I don't like the matchup, and I don't know. I get a sense that UCLA is a team that plays better in these big games, and yeah, when they're playing certain games, they have looked a little sleepy, but I think UCLA is going to be ready for this, so I do like UCLA kind of a lot.
I don't know if I'm ready to love UCLA. The vibes, it's just I would like UCLA a lot more if they didn't just lose to Arizona. That's very concerning for me because you're either going to get a team that's kind of their will's a little bit broken. This was a team that maybe was thinking about a Pac-12 championship or Rose Bowl appearance, and now it's 2 losses. You're hurting bad. My take on this is I think I like USC, but I don't love them. And you look at what USC's done down the stretch. They lose to Utah on the road. They don't look all that impressive on the road at Arizona. They play Cal within 6 points. Cal is not a very good football team. It's not like USC is playing the best football of their season either. If it gets to over 3 and you get a field goal, you probably could take me. Probably sell me on UCLA, but right now I'm probably leaning USC. I just think it's a little bit too much firepower. They score too quickly, and UCLA coming off a loss to Arizona. What is it going to look like? The vibes kind of feel like USC, but this is a tough.
I feel like the line is telling you it's UCLA, because why would Vegas have opened it up and say they're basically equal when everything else on paper seems to suggest they're not equal? And yeah, UCLA just coming off a horrible game. I don't know. I think you're like walking yourself into a bit of a trap taking USC here.
Yeah, a little bit. And I also want to kind of go off. We'll close it out after this and keep it kind of short for you guys. But USC or UCLA, during the big games, they play their best football. Like they played Bowling Green close for a half. They played South Alabama close. But when it comes to playing really big games, Washington, Utah, they play good, and they played well against Oregon too. And then sometimes you just get that sleepwalk game where they kind of fell asleep against Arizona last night. UCLA is going to be ready to rock and roll. This is a very, very exciting game, and I think UCLA is going to be ready to game up. And you have guys like DTR, Zach Charbonnet establishing that run. You could sell me on UCLA. For right now, I'm kind of holding off with a lean to USC. It sounds like you like UCLA a lot more than I do. Again, we appreciate all the support you guys have shown. We'll close it off on that Dill riding the Bruins here. Again, if it gets over 3, you could sell me on it a little bit more, but we appreciate all the support you guys have shown to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.